everything that I've ever avoided in those time has become worse because I didn't have the hard conversation.
Yeah. When I started my accounting firm, I dreamed of more impact, but instead found myself buried in 60-hour weeks, chasing deadlines, and stuck as the bottleneck. Over the years, I've learned how to take back control of my time, my team, and my profit, and I built systems that help grow Inspire into a multi-million-dollar firm without sacrificing family or freedom. This podcast, High Performance Accountants, is where I share what worked and talk with other firm owners and experts who are doing the same. I'm Ben Walker, and if you'd like more tools, videos, and insights, join our free community at highperformance.accountants/Facebook. Now let's dive in.
Good day, everyone, and particularly welcome to my lovely guest here, Mr. Rizal Ramzan, when he's in trouble, or Riz, when we are hanging out together. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Benny. It's good to be here. It's good to be on a podcast with you again. Missed doing this for a while, but I generally enjoy our chat. So let's see where this takes us, hey?
Yes. Good point about not having a podcast in a while. I think having our fourth child put me in a bit of a hiding zone and put me into hiding. And here I am.
Well, funny.
18 months now, and yes, things are getting...
Well, just before the podcast started, one of the kids tried to jump in and on your lap, hey, daddy, yeah, which is, very cute. And but you definitely have your hands full, mate. I know that.
I do, and it's nice, but it's better at other times. But yes, so what are we doing today? What I thought is there's definitely a few topics that I've had when I've been coaching other accounting firm owners, and there's just been some awesome topics that I reckon I could be talking about for hours, literally hours in my response. But obviously, in a session, there's not the time. But what I thought is some of those things I think will make fantastic podcast topics. And I would be the pleasure would be mine to also host Riz to talk through these things, because some of them are quite emotionally challenging. And Riz we've been working together for almost a decade now.
Almost a decade. That's crazy. That's never done anything longer than this in my life, but it's rewarding. But you're right, some challenges, along the way. And I've had the privilege of, being part of the team, to managing, to co-leading some of the parts of the firm with you. And it's been definitely an eye-opener from the ground up. And I wouldn't say I'm the first guy to know everything. Like, I'm not the expert of everything to do with running an accounting firm, but gosh, there's some battle scars that I'm happy to share, just to really pour my heart out there, because I do love the industry. I love the people that's in it, both from a client and team perspective. And it'd be so good to hear from other business owners or other accounting owners as well, and what they've gone through. So if I could share my piece of the world, cool. And if you resonate with it, I appreciate it. And if you don't, I'd love to hear from more people. But there's a lot that I'd love to talk about.
Awesome. Well, we had a few different topics we were talking about before we kicked off today that we could run through, but what we might start with a bit of a doozy, which is all about dealing with difficult team members. It's a little bit of a yucky topic, a bit yucky, but we will all encounter this if we hire a team to work in our firm. We will always, at some point, incur some dramas in performance management.
Yeah, for sure. And I think difficult, you can term it difficult in so many different ways, because you can be, when we say difficult, it's like difficult to work with, or is it a productivity issue? Is it an ownership issue of taking tasks as your own, or is it just, toxic relationship issue? There's so many things that can come through, because humans are humans. Like, we don't sell products. That's all we do. We deal with people day to day, from team to clients. So this it's only normal for us to have to deal with the good side, the wins of having, working with amazing people. But from time to time, there's going to be some challenges for sure. Why we landed on this topic is because it's not because I'm the expert of dealing with difficult people, but it is something that I'm passionate about, in the sense that I like to solve a lot of problems. And when it comes to people problems, or people issues or challenges, it is one of the more interesting ones because the facets, there's so many facets to it. It's not like a 1+1=2. It's not sometimes that straightforward or logic. And there's so many, you can go and do an MBA about this. You can go to HR courses. There's so many different tools. I haven't gone through any of that. I mean, I've learned some of it, but I haven't gone and picked that up and used it. Where my experience comes from is literal day-to-day experience that I've had over the decade of working in Inspire and just dealing with that every day. And from my experience, it's a skill that I definitely developed and learned over time. But
Even better.
it's not something I was born with. I don't know, Ben, would you agree in that sense that well, you started the firm, you more
Yeah.
people.
But maybe I'll ask you, what do you think my dealing with people skills are like?
I mean, honestly, you have moments of it, and I'm not trying to blow smoke here, but you do have moments of it, because there's moments where you do really truly know how to inspire people, which I think is a really important part of the equation of getting the most out of people. No pun intended with the name of the firm, but you really do know how to get people to come up, show up, and do the best. The sound effects are gonna throw me off, but I love it. But you do have the ability to kind of get people gathered together, and I think it's through that authenticity that you bring to the table in being real as a quote unquote boss. And there's always perception that a founder, a partner, a director of the business is this person that you can't be a human being with, and I think you take that and put it in the bin.
Right.
And I,
Yeah.
I genuinely think, and that's probably why I have been able to explore my skills in this area as well, because you allow me that space and I can bring up those issues with you without kind of having this worry. If I tell Ben, my head get chopped off?
Maybe.
Sometimes let's put the opposite end of it as well, right?
Yeah.
Like we're all not perfect. And I think where you and the team complement each other a little bit better is confrontation is a challenge, and I think you've experienced that where you've kind of taken the conversation internally with, the trusted people, whether that's the leadership team or myself one-to-one. Again, just to kind of showcase that again, authenticity of being able to say, hey, I don't know how to have this conversation.
Yeah.
So confrontational. And that's my weak point of, because if I go right now, and we've had these conversations, right? If I go right now, it's just going to be this emotional rant of like, you did this, you did that, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But how do we box that up? And it's not box it up to make it pretty and not real and disconnected from the message that people totally get confused and vague, missing the point.
Mm.
It's how do we turn that into a very real, anchored in authenticity, but very productive message at the same time? Because what's the point? Like, there's no point just telling people something's wrong. What can we do to help kind of
Yeah.
bridge that gap, right? So that's where I see, answering your question. That's where I see some of the stuff that you've been able to get help from. And from my experience in the last 10 years is it's been different every time. And there's some golden nuggets in some of those situations that we've been through, Ben, together. And
Mm.
I'm happy to share all of that today.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And maybe just maybe a way that we sort of work into some of these conversations is we start with like the different categories of how people might be underperforming.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a few before, but for example, I don't think you use this word, but similar words. One of them, and one close to my heart, is culture. So
Yeah.
if someone's culturally challenging,
Yeah.
then that's a huge issue. Another one could be technical ability, like
Mm.
the actual brain
Doing
power
the work.
to compute the debits and the credits.
That's right. That's right.
Uh,
Yeah. That's the thing. You can box it up too, right? In different categories. And to be honest, it could be anything. And sometimes it's one thing affecting the other.
yeah,
And sometimes you think it's this, but it's actually that. Right.
yeah,
So the honest truth is whenever you have an issue, or I've had an issue with a team member, I don't genuinely know until I start speaking to the person.
yeah,
So it's almost like that's the hardest conversation that I need to have. That's the conversation I need to have. Right.
mm,
So it's really cutting through the noise because you're making a lot of assumptions of what the issue is. And it's from one-sided perspective of, I think the issue is technical. They don't know what they're doing. But as I've discovered in some of the conversations I've had, it's like, oh, it's actually not technical. It's a lack of this, a lack of
yes,
something else. They know the basics. It's not that. That's the first thing that usually pops up for us is, oh, they missed that. That was an error. That's an issue. Did anything.
mm,
Now, usually where it all kind of falls down to is the human side of it that I
mm,
see that becomes the issue. And that can be different facets. Like they can have stuff happening at home, right?
Mm.
They can have stuff happening personally, health wise, mentally. They can have stuff happening to them from psychological trauma issues that they've had that's come up or surface, and
And
I'm not saying go in and become a psychologist, but it does feel like it sometimes that you go in and try to understand, empathize and understand, and lead with the empathy first before just going and looking at timesheets, for instance, going, you weren't productive.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's such a science part of it, which is numbers and robotic, but then we're dealing with humans. So if I was going to go back to what you were trying to do there, like break it down,
mm,
culture, the buzzword of, for the last 15 years is, or maybe more, is this soupy thing that people kind of try very hard to define. And I think you make it what you want it to be. My true belief is that you create your culture, what you mean by what we think of culture. But there is some kind of crossover between culture and values, right? So when we look at companies with values, they list them out. Do they actually live them? You just got to ask yourself that question. Or does it really matter?
mm,
I know we're not talking about the people yet, but you need to be clear on what your values are and how well you communicate those values in the first place.
yeah,
Because if you're living it, you're breathing it, you're doing it, everything around you is leaving those values, and there's no gap between those two, then it's very easy for you to then dive into those conversations and actually set up systems and processes and metrics to measure those values as well. I think Simon Sinek said this in one of his TED Talks, one of his famous TED Talks. We have all this metric in the world to measure productivity, but that's nothing to measure trust,
yeah.
which is wild, right? Like, it's like, wow, but trusting teams get great results.
And I
Measure.
guess culture is something that, like, maybe that's actually a good topic for another podcast episode to like deep dive into what it is, how do you
Mm,
create it?
mm,
Because I feel like it's a bit of a challenge
it
for a
is.
lot of firm owners to do that. But let's maybe what we'll do is we'll for that sort of issue, maybe we'll try to describe what that is.
Mm,
I'll start with what my observation would be.
mm,
It would be that any group of people, even if I look at my kids at home here, there's a culture when they get together. There's a culture. There's a way that they act.
yes,
And if you see them in different circumstances, it can be completely different. Like
absolutely.
when I take my two older kids camping, I've got four in total.
Yeah.
If I take my two older kids camping and it's just me, they're like angels. They listen most of the time. They're awesome. But you throw the two younger kids with them and my wife Stevie in the mix,
Mm,
and it's usually chaos.
mm, mm,
And
mm.
so, yeah, maybe that's sort of like a subculture versus the bigger one. But yeah, just an observation like that. And maybe if I look at some of the instances we've had where we've had challenging culture
Yeah.
fits at Inspire, is that there's a way we do things when we're a group, whether it's 10, 15, 20 people, or, I think we're close to 40 at the moment if we include
Mm,
our global team as well. There's a way we act. There's a respect that we have for one another. There's a way we talk to each other, and part of that's documented, but there's also a undocumented part of it
yes.
too.
Yes.
Yeah, and I feel like our hiring process, we know what we're looking for in that sense.
Yeah.
Maybe again, if I boil it all down, I sort of feel cultural issues or cultural performance issues with team members are where they're just not fitting in with the rest of the team. And maybe it's even as vague as that sounds. There's
Mm,
something they're doing, and maybe it's obvious you can describe it, but that they're like not getting the message that that's not acceptable.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and performance improvement plans. We've heard of this term. People getting put on performance improvement plans. Or they call it PIPs. And usually the PIP is used as a metric to to set KPIs that they need to be very clearly. If you don't do this, first warning, second warning. We'll
Yeah.
see you later, and so on and so forth. Now, but where I think the missing bit in those PIPs is like, if they're not hitting those metrics or those targets or those KPIs, what's the underlying issue? And are we treating that actual underlying issue? And when you talk about culture and people not fitting in a team, that vagueness,
Yeah.
it usually the most science that I can put to it is like the values. It's like, are we aligned on values? Like, not saying their values are wrong. Are we aligned on our values? It's a different question. Like, if for instance, one of our values is dreaming big, making an impact, remember it, and be authentic. That's all our values. Now, when we think about being authentic, are we being real with ourselves, our customers, our clients, and also most importantly is ourselves? Like, do we have an imposter syndrome that's happening? Are we raising issues? Like, one example of you just now, Ben, I'm having a confrontational conversation soon. I don't know how to handle this. I'm
Mm.
not the best at this. I need some help. That's being authentic with your kind of weaknesses, call it your shortfall. You don't know what to do. That can be boiled down in so many different situations, even when it's technical. Like, if you're a senior accountant, senior quote unquote, you know, there's this perception that you've done this long enough, you should know everything or enough that you shouldn't ask dumb questions, right? You see how that kind of fills into the culture and values again, and are you authentic or not? Now, there's really two paths to go there. If you're not sure of something and you don't know how to do it, or you're new to it, do you go down the path of being authentic about it, or do you, the term fake it till you make it? Now,
Mm.
there is kind of pros and cons of both. I'm not saying it's all right or wrong, but where if you're being authentic about it and you're wanting to take responsibility, ownership, and you're trying to grow yourself, that's really where what you're trying to do, which aligns with our other values, dreaming big, right? Then you're going to take this path that's just going to create a newer version of you that's always going to be better. Now, when I talk about dealing with that, like how do we spot that as an issue? The tip of the iceberg is not that. This is underneath the iceberg, right?
Yep.
How do we spot that? Is through conversations and also tools like when you talk about hiring processes now, Ben, as you know, we have a sheet called Calls to Diamonds, and then we've got a sheet called a job scorecard that we have. Now, that's tools that we've created over the time. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the job scorecard is essentially a very clear description of what is your purpose as a role, and also some key responsibilities, key competencies, and also at the bottom there, which I argue should be actually on top now, I think, but it is the values. So what I was talking about Simon Sinek before, we've got all these metrics. We can go productivity or whatever that you measure, competencies, this easy scientific stuff. But is our team scoring on values, right?
Yep.
Are they being authentic or not? Now, I don't I don't necessarily say that they're authentic or not. I can judge that, but I can use that as a bit of an entry point to have a
Mm.
bigger conversation. So if a team member, for instance, comes to me practically, oh, maybe I've noticed a few things about a team member. They're skipping a lot of meetings. They're not showing up on time, or they're not producing the work that they used to, missing a lot of little bits.
Mm.
We have I'll talk about rhythms in a second, but we have a monthly check-in that we would do. And then in that monthly check-in, we would just generally look through that job scorecard, see if anything jumps out, and we can adjust those scores as well and score them. Now, in that moment, if I'm trying to have a difficult conversation about, hey, I don't think you're performing really well, here's some metrics at the top. Yeah, I can go through that. But where I really focus on is the value side of things. Is I go,
Mm.
well, there's some stuff around ownership of work that I'm seeing that you're not taking on board. Do you have under our dreaming big values is you got to work hard, you got to have
Mm.
ethics, you got to own your work. That's the subsection of that values. Then we score. Are you actually doing well on those areas? Now, if you're not, it's not about penalizing that, but just understanding, going, hey, ownership's been a little bit lacking, and it's also impacting other parts.
Mm.
Trust issues are coming out. I can't trust you with a job. Now I'm ending up doing it all myself. How many of us do that, right? We don't trust a team member. I'll do it,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure in the HBA you'll learn that that's not a good idea to just take everything on, right? So but you want to address that issue by asking the question. It's like, well, why are we scoring so low on this? And
Yeah.
things might come out of it.
Yep.
What is happening from a values perspective? Is it a change in values, or is there something else happening that you might see, your home life or some other issues come into play? You
Mm.
might see that. Now, that's a separate conversation that we can go into, but
Yeah.
that tool that we use allows us to measure the non quantitative
Mm.
KPIs. It's actually about the human being itself. Now, when we say difficult, I find that's the most difficult bit, is actually having a team member. And if I kind of do an avatar of what a difficult team member looks like, is they don't take ownership of work. They say they would do something, but they don't, right? And
No updates.
no
No heads
updates,
up.
no comms. They don't take responsibility if issues are wrong. They made a mistake. They don't take responsibility on it. They just blame everything else around them. All this stuff is, you're not going to be able to use timesheets to fix that. You're not going to be able to use any other metric at the top level to be able to fix that, because you're just trying to drive values, emotional, superhuman problem with a lot of data and science. Like, it's just not going to work. So really addressing that issue, the underlying issue, is the thing that's, and then we move on to the next conversation. You spot that and talk about it at that level first. So
And I might, I sort of feel like I've written down a couple of notes as we've been talking, because I sort of feel like I've got, I think we recap and just bed down a couple of key points so far. One of them, from my perspective, is performance can vary with team members. So you might have a really, like a person who's really great, they're solid, and then all of a sudden their performance starts changing, and that's quite annoying and confusing and concerning, especially where nothing obvious is the cause. But I think we've seen it where that's happened, and often and maybe this is my second key takeaway here, is the observation, let's say sloppy performance, like that's really not the issue. We got to look deeper to see what the actual issue is. And let's say, someone's having relationship issues, or some dramas with their kids, or whatever it is. Some of those things can really impact motivation, work. I know, like physically, I've struggled with sleep over the last few years on occasion. Sometimes it's just a complete write-off. That's I'm going to show up differently those days. But I guess, and maybe this is my third point, regardless of what it is, I feel like maybe the tendency is to just hope they get better. And I've heard the saying before, hope is not a strategy. We can't just, because I sort of feel like that to a degree is ignoring at least the process to go through to hope to improve that performance. But ignoring is not the solution. Hoping they're going to get better, or accepting that, yeah, they're okay at that, but hey, they're really horrible over here. We shouldn't, as people running firms, we shouldn't just be okay with that. We should try to address the 20, 30% that's not ideal, or particularly, and this is the thing, like for me, values match and culture match is paramount. If you're struggling to learn Division 7A and how to apply it in some strange situations, I'm going to have patience for that. I don't even care if you muck that up a couple of times. But if you're there, try to bring a filthy culture, toxicity, talking about people behind their backs. We've seen examples of that, unfortunately.
And the question you have to ask is, like, what do you accept, right?
Yeah.
As a firm owner, as you're running the ship, what do you accept? Who are the people you're letting on your ship right now? And there will be, and you might want to assess that right now. You want to assess currently who's on my ship. If I use all my values and I score them on the values, who's the people that I would trust them with my life, and who's the people that, they're just here to work, right? Do you accept that? That's the next question. Do you accept having those people on your boat? Like, if this was the only ship that's left to save humanity, would you accept that? I'm being dramatic here, but would you accept that?
I'm running an accounting firm, not saving the world. Some might suggest,
because it can be the life or death of your accounting firm, because it is the shift in the headcount of people who are aligned with your values and not. We've had a point in time in our firm, Ben, where we had more people on one side than our values, and it always felt like the leadership team, or the people who are aligned very strongly, was having to convince people that, hey, we're going this way. But then there's always this kind of, you always feel like you're fighting against an unknown entity, where there's whispers and toxicity. That has happened. But that's because we have accepted that as the way that we want to run. We've accepted those people. The sooner, and also maybe we haven't had earlier conversations with some of these people. That would,
it's hard.
It's so hard. How do you have those conversations?
We've got so much going on already. We've got the TPP up our clackers. We've got the frigging CA and CPA and whatever other 3-letter, 4-letter, 5-letter initial accounting body that need their money every year.
That's right.
We've got ridiculous client expectations. Generally, I think we care for our team, we care for our clients. And then when someone's not performing, the last thing we want to do is have a talk to someone about whatever their underperformance looks like.
Well, here's the wish, right? The thing that we wish we could do. We come in and everyone would be performing well engaged, and they are bringing the best every day.
Mm.
like robots, right? Like, and then we just do the work. That's always, sometimes I see myself say that. Can't everyone just do the work,
Yeah.
and just get on with it?
Get on with
But
it.
it's just if we're running a firm, it's just not going to be the case. We got to accept the
Mm.
fact that things change in people's lives. And it's kind of like herding little chickens, and you're trying to keep it in a circle. You pull one, the other one runs away. You're always constantly trying to do this. And I think what I've learned with having a system or process behind it, like job scorecards, and which we use for hiring and also for ongoing check-ins, it allows you to have that conversation not when it's too late, like when you're trying to steer the ship, but it's heavy. It's
Mm.
just a small course correction to start with, which ends in a good place. Very little.
And so what we might do now is if we shift gears to like how do we prevent some of these stuff? We'll get it early. Let's talk about that, which I think is, to your point, scorecards, monthly check-ins. So let's maybe share a little bit about how we do that, and then what we might do is switch gears because and again, I think everyone's got the best intention, and we have a lot of faith in the people who
Of
work
course.
with us. Probably too much in certain instances. So what we'll do maybe towards after that is talk about, well, how do we deal with someone who is underperforming or has been maybe even for a long time? So let's maybe go to
Perfect.
getting ahead of it.
Yeah.
So proactive performance management, let's call that.
Yeah. And it's difficult. Like, again, I just cannot agree more how difficult it is to stay proactive on this stuff. And it's about allocating time, right? Prioritization of this stuff in your week or months. And one of the things that we do is a monthly check-in, and which can be a quick, impromptu, doesn't have to be a heavy score you on every facet of what you're doing. And then it's so tiring to do that. I tried to do it. It's so tiring. And I'm like, and even the team member was like, a month goes like this.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
we
Hang on, didn't we have
just
that second
didn't we
last
just
week?
didn't you just ask me how this question? Like, it feels like yesterday. So what I had to do, well, I just changed it. I just went, yeah, you know what, like, are you okay? Literally, that's all.
Mm.
Are you okay? Yeah, I'm going fine. But I want to be real with you, and I've set that standard over time. But that's something that we just want to keep encouraging. Hey, be real. I want to be real with you. Like, are you okay? Not, are you okay? There's a difference. It's really just a quick check in of like, yeah, Mike, you okay? And you need to be able to kind of spot those little nuances sometimes where they go, no, no, yeah, I'm okay. That can open up a whole conversation, and something that leads into an hour conversation. Now, if you do spot that in your monthly check-in, right? Spend the time there. Don't move on. Don't brush that off, because that is your prevention tool. They've blinked the light. We see it, and
Mm.
some people are more intuitive than not. Some people need a more clear sign, but that's where you could use the tool to actually go and score. Because, sorry, I should mention, in that job scorecard, they also score when when we're doing those job scorecards. So both of us are scoring the same person, and self-scoring and manager scoring. That way that they can put. The other thing that we do as well is weekly how are you doing pulses that we use software called IntelliHR. It
And
sends out.
ju-
Sorry.
maybe describe it, and then I'll share a couple more things on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sends out a pulse every week, and it's not big questions. Doesn't get in the hair of your team members. And this is annoying auto form.
Mm.
Literally a very caring question. How are you going? How happy are you in the role?
Mm.
Sounds so, useless on the surface, but again, you're looking for blinking lights here. As many places as possible, and there's other stuff, but I'll let you
Yeah.
go back to your thought first, man.
Yeah, just on IntelliHR, that definitely does what you'd call maybe employee happiness.
Mm.
There are other software alternatives that just do that, and even like a type form or a jot form, even form solutions could do something like that if you do want some alternatives.
Slack does auto stuff as well. You can just pop something in every week. People just go, yeah, no, maybe.
That's a
Um,
good point.
and you want to create that space for it they can be authentic. So we also try to communicate where does that answer go, so that they're not just putting tens across. And we've had this challenge with our overseas team where the culture is never to complain. And I
Yes.
know myself, I come from that culture, and you just score tens no matter how unhappy you are, right? So
Yes, Paul.
yeah, jump how high, right? Like, we'll just do whatever. But in the background, there's so much mess, actually.
Yeah.
And that's the proactiveness, is trying to be understanding or be aware of where your team members are at.
Mm.
But you need help with tools and and rhythms like this, because you just don't have the time to be looking at it all day.
And they're important. So, and maybe just to sort of share how important that is the response goes to that person's direct manager, but it also goes to my inbox, and I do click on. Maybe it's only a quick scan, or just looking for that number because there's a box to write some reasons. If let's say it's the employee or the team member wants to share a little bit more context. I'll just scan to check, and if anyone's super low or if someone's super high, or some got some content, I'm reading that. I'm making sure I've got my finger on the pulse of how our team are doing.
But let's also understand that you might not be the necessary person to go and, I call it,
Exactly.
deal with it, but talk about it. But there's shared awareness in the team with the manager and Ben, for instance, where if I didn't have the time to pick that up, I get slacks from Ben. Hey, I saw that. Riz, did you miss it? Say,
Yeah.
oh crap, yeah, I did miss it. Thanks for bringing it to my attention, because that's a blinking red light, right?
Yeah. X and Y person's a 5 this week. They're usually a 9 or 8.
Do you find that you pick that up, especially when someone usually is like an 8 or 9 or 10,
Yeah.
and then suddenly it's like a 5?
Yeah.
Jarring, right? You're like, Bob is scoring a 5?
Yeah. Some people are like very, very 10-ish every week.
That's
And
right.
some people are like 7s. They might go a 10. It happens. So, but
Yeah.
and I think maybe as a business, one of the metrics we do track is that average happiness across the whole team too. So, maybe we go through periods, let's say tax planning, where it's pretty
Oh,
nuts.
yeah.
That we might get a few, like on an average, we might get 1 or 2 notches less on the scale out of 10. But again, it's a feedback point. It's right back to a point on like proactive performance management. We can pick up things before they might turn into pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
Even just touching on the one-to-one check-ins that we do in that scorecard. Riz did mention this, where we get them to fill out what they think of themselves first, and then the manager reviews that and gives their rating as well. You sort of skimmed over it a bit, but I think it's worth just saying again that it's such a good tool to identify where there's a difference in perception of how that person's going. So, for instance, I've had instances where people are rating themselves really low on certain things, and I would rate them higher, or really low on certain things, but they've got a lot going on. I get it. And I go, that's reasonable. Or I can't remember an example, but I'm sure I've had it, or you might have had it, where someone's rating themselves a 10 out of 10, and you're like, what a joke. What do you mean you can
Yeah,
do blah,
yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah. And expand that on further. Usually it's because we're seeing two different things. It's not
Yes.
because one person is totally right or wrong. It's someone scored it on, I'm really good on this bit, which I'm harping on about, but there's so much more that probably could be worked on. It could be right, but it's, that's why it's a score 1 to 10. Again, there's only so much science that goes in there. You have to have the conversation.
And there's a comment section too to add to pieces, but yeah, generally that's
And I was trying to reflect back when you said, oh, it's our kind of early feedback point for this weekly stuff. Now, again, when if we talk about difficult team members, these aren't difficult team members. This is just team members going by their day and they're scoring a 5. You see what I'm saying? They're not difficult team members we're dealing with, but they can turn into difficult team members if we don't pick that up early enough. What that means is whatever that issue is, we as management or owners or whatever you want to call it, leaders, have ignored an issue. And to not spot it itself is, a challenge already. But if we see it and we ignore it, there's just something that's brewing underneath there that we don't know about. Now, it's better to know and try to kind of deal with it and reason with it or talk to them about it early on. That course correction principle I mentioned, we just, oh yeah, score 5. And then guess what? And usually, and this is I've seen this in practice, if you ignore it once, there's a likelihood that you'll never see that blinking red light again. You've someone's for the first time ever sang out and said, I need help. I've just something wrong with my role, or I'm not
and just that action alone might have taken them a lot of emotional energy to do, even though to you it was like, hi, like a really low
That's right.
signal.
That's right. Yeah. To you, because you've got 20 people or 15 or whatever, how many people you manage, it's so easy to just write that off, right? And go, oh yeah. But for them, it was like, oh man, I've been thinking about it all weekend.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something. 5. You know what I mean? Like that's all they do. But there's so much more underneath that. And this is from experience, because every time we've had conversations with people who scored a 5 or a 4, it's like, whoa, we didn't know that was all happening, you know? And there's some, we'll talk about how to deal with that in the conversations in a bit, but the weekly pulse,
Mm.
some sort of format to get a pulse on your team, how they're all going as an early indicator. Your weekly, sorry, monthly check-in as a more formal, but can be quick as well. We also do our appraisals is actually quarterly. So what do we call it in the accounting world?
Every time I say quarter, when I'm talking to other firm
Ah,
owners, I'm like, it's not a Bath quarter, it's actually a trimester.
yeah,
So
that's right.
we run 3 quarters a year.
Thank you, man. I always, yeah,
Imagine accountants trying to
yeah.
talk fractions that don't make sense.
Yeah, it would break everyone's head. But 3 times a year we do that instead of once a year. When we talk about appraisals or like when we do like formal performance reviews
Mm.
to see whether or not, you know, they're meeting expectations, exceeding, or, you know, there might be promotion in line for them. The reason why we do it 3 times a year, there's a few reasons. One of them also is because we don't do timesheets. So what that means is a team member might have gained new skills or new responsibilities within that 4 month period that we need to recognize straight away rather than waiting a year. In our experience as well, that decreases resentment um, with
Huge.
what you're doing hugely. If you've taken a big step up in your role and you're doing all the things great, why wait a year to then recognize this person's abilities instead of going, all right, you've done it for 4 months, we recognize it, cool. And we discussed it in the prior 4 months actually that you were going to do this and you did it. And we have a scale of how that works in terms of how much of a pay rise they get, what changes in roles, what do you call it, titles that they get.
Mm.
So we do it quarter, and that resentment thing, again, from learning from experience here, is something that quietly creeps up and we don't intentionally create because you think everyone like you can have A performers that go to B, C, and then D, and
Mhm.
then man, they left. Like why? Have you ever had that? We've had that. Like why? They were doing so well. They were on the way to this, on the way to that. There was a point that something happened that was not communicated, not picked up, not discussed, that changed the trajectory, right? And all this stuff that we put in place, including that quarterly rhythm instead of
Mm.
yearly, or sorry, 4 monthly trimester rhythm, is to try to pick up as much of this as possible because you're trying to aim for long-term prospects with those team members, right? You're trying to get them to stay with your team as long as they want, as long as we are all engaged together. And it takes that effort a little bit, but it is prioritization and through system and process of those rhythms. You can't rely on me on memory and feelings alone. Like I am busy. We are all busy. We rely on that. It's just going to get messy, soupy. We forget things. And the other thing I would just say is every one of them, treat them with high respect.
Yeah.
Treat them, don't reschedule them. Don't, you know,
Yeah, it's huge.
show up late, not ready. Don't like treat them with high respect. And I would say that it's as much as for them, it is for you. It's actually more for me than it is for them
Mm.
when we do those check-ins.
It is a huge signal from a trust perspective, a relationship, or maybe just weight that you place on it. So yeah, please don't like. Sometimes it'll be unavoidable, but please don't reschedule, push back another day, forget about them. That's really not ideal. But on the other hand, these one-to-one check-ins, there is a component for the team member to do and prepare,
Mhm.
and in our process, they've got to submit that before the meeting, so then we can do our review beforehand.
That's
As
right.
long as that's communicated, that should be your trigger to prepare for the meeting and then show up. So, but yeah, like I mean, we all know that if someone just bails on us or at the last minute or something like that, it's just a bit of it's not a great signal, and we need to treat our team, with respect. That hey, we value you, we take you seriously. Bailing on those things which can be really important to team members is not a fantastic idea.
I just want to preface that as well. Like with if you sometimes trying to do that inauthentically, it's hard. The reason why the easier way to do it is naturally to think of it as this is going to be if we get this right, it might not be everyone, but if we get this right, we have a very long term key team member. That's who we're trying to grow and mentor into. So if we think of it that way, it's more natural that we want to take care of this,
Yeah.
relationship. So it's coming from that perspective, going, I'm imagining you as being here, maybe partner one day, That's why I'm so serious about this catch up. So that's also important is the intention of why you're going in there. It's not just to make sure you're okay, keep making me money. You know, I mean, like that's a very transactional relationship.
Yeah. And maybe before we talk into like essentially damage control, or how do we deal with underperformance, but let's touch on the commerciality, because I think we've
Yes.
talked about fluffiness
Sure.
and the emotions and things that.
Then let's talk about the part the accountants love. The numbers.
Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
but if we think like, let's have a look at like the cost to rehire someone
Yeah.
is huge, tens of thousands of dollars. Maybe recruitment, which would push that even more, tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Damn, the months it might take for them to pick up the work and get good. Your involvement. So you've got to hire, you've got to interview, you've got to, you might get the lawyer to go over the contracts. It's just, and what I'm talking about is that if you've got to replace someone is the issue, versus like getting them on the right pathway because you've picked something up early. You might have client mistakes, which can cost hundreds or thousands of dollars, that if you nip in the bud, like, hey, don't do that next time. Can we use this system instead? Or here's a script so you don't offend a client, please. Maybe I need a few of them. And
I can write it for you.
like we're talking big money, even though like I don't think we see the cash disappear off our desk, but these issues are very expensive to deal with, even if it's one person. What if a bad performer makes a good performer leave?
Yeah, that's even worse. That
Oh,
it is infectious. That whole headcount thing I talked about culturally, right?
yep.
Like it can infect the team.
But they want to be the last one. They don't want to be the last one off the ship. So the good
No.
performers are going to go, I'm too, and rightfully so. I'm assuming like an actual good performer, not someone who's full of themselves. But yeah, hey, I'm going to jump ship, go somewhere that might look after me better, or that I don't have to work with dickheads.
Hmm. And we're kind of going into the why should we do this, right? That's
Yeah,
the negative limb of like losing money, losing clients, losing team.
yeah,
And then there's the positive limb of like, wow, if we really invest in our people and really do this, there's long-term, long-lasting effects. Also not losing money, yes, but the engagement out of the team, the innovation that comes out of the team, they just bring it to you. You're not knocking on every door. Tell me. They're just doing it, And there's this kind of machine that just hums really well because of this investment that you've made. So I think you choose which one, the carrot or the stick here, of why you want to do it, but the purpose you want to go into. But I think it's important to understand that, you're dealing with humans. And if we're just thinking of, again, we can't just think of the fluffy side, like Ben said. We can't think of just, oh, I'm doing this because I'm just trying to protect my bottom line. Then this side doesn't come out. That care and intention and relationship doesn't come out. And people smell that BS far away.
yeah.
But you're just doing this so that you can keep more money in your pocket. We're dealing with humans. That's what I'm trying to say. There's two parts of that.
But yeah, like reiterating the commerciality of getting this right means huge benefit.
Huge.
You can't just let things stew or not deal with issues. It's really worth your time, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And that comes to the prioritization again.
Oh, it's unbillable hours like that.
Yeah.
Imagine, like, you turn little problems into big problems. Imagine the opportunity cost or the hours that you won't be able to bill then.
I'm laughing because we've thought like that before.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
we've gone, this is such a waste of time. Why am I talking to the people that are doing all the work? And now looking back, I'm laughing at myself here. I just want to be clear. I'm laughing at myself. It's like, wow, you really didn't know anything, did you, at that point, And it's like, and learning all this stuff now, it's easy to say backwards, but there is a journey to get here.
Yeah.
There's a bit of self-learning as well, unlearning and learning that we need to do to be able to have these conversations. Because we might be focused on one side, we're really good at that, but how do we do this side? The systems process and also practice. It's a muscle that you just have to kind of keep practicing. And yeah, there's courses, I'm in Sinek, that you can books that you can read on how to kind of get this across the line, or get, self-develop you as a leader as well. All of the above would help, but where I've come to learn is that you being real enough with what your intentions are and investing in that relationship will make a big difference in how you prevent a lot of the issues that might come up.
Want to go deeper beyond the podcast? Join me inside the High Performance Accountants Facebook group. It's a community of firm owners committed to building better businesses and better lives. I share new videos, tools, and strategies each week, and I jump in personally to answer your questions. It's free and it's where the best discussions happen. Join us now at highperformance.accountants/Facebook.
All right. Well, we've talked about the categories or the types of performance issues that might pop up. We've talked about how to proactively get ahead of some of these things. And by the way, there's a lot of things that fall off those two topics so far, but let's shift gears into like, what do we do about it? What's some really practical ways that we can, start dealing with some of these issues? And I hope for those listening, I hope to some degree that these aren't issues that have stayed around for too long. I think the longer a performance issue has existed, the harder it is to go and call them out and sort of work. And maybe part of the authenticity you have to have is saying, I haven't. It's been too long. I should have said something a bit earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
If you've done your assessment of like, these are the people that I don't want on the ship,
Mm.
I'm not saying leave them there or boot them out straight away. There's still a way we can, kind of change the equation here a little bit. But exactly that, Ben, that was a great, authenticity piece of going, I'm just going to be totally honest. I'm not quite happy where things are at. And you don't know about this.
Mm.
This is something I've been feeling, saying, thinking it to myself. But now I want to invest in this time. And I think that's there's a couple maxims I'll share here is like, you want to look at it as an investment in time for you, to them, to help them. But at the same time, you need to ask them, are you keen to invest some time in this as well?
And I guess that conversation would be had in the initial meeting where you're bringing this up.
Correct. So if let's say someone scored a 5 and they had some issues, yeah, okay, cool. We're trying to help you provide support. And sometimes things just keep happening and happening and happening, and you're going, we don't want to leave that too long, because then that the first conversation is not the we're gonna fire you conversation or anything like that. It's the
Really,
hey, I think we need to treat this very seriously,
Mm.
and we need to decide whether we're going to invest time together to go ahead together or separate together. The key word is together in both. Go ahead together or separate together. You both are deciding to do that, rather than I'm deciding for you that this is happening.
And that's a ballsy conversation to have. But at the end of the day, I sort of think it's better said than leaving it awkwardly. Like, you both know that at the end of this PIP, and we'll get into what we mean by PIP, or at the end of this term, if things aren't improved enough, we're going to have to call it. And it's best for both of us to.
Yeah. And I want to just disclaim this with like, we're not HR consultants. We're not, to go get your own advice about how format whatever warnings you have to give out. I want to keep this as conversational as possible. We're just sharing those experiences, and don't come back with me comments about, oh, you didn't do it the right process. No, this is not, that's not the point of the conversation. I'm trying to give you the essence of what we've done in the past. And essentially the conversation that we're about to have is, hey, are we a right fit conversation going forward or not? Really, that's the conversation we're having. And there's a process to it. And it does take investment in time for both, because if you have to make them realize really clearly that for me to be able to be happy with you, well, our relationship going forward, you still working for us and providing the services or whatever you want to call it, like employment, like there's a commercial reality to that that you need to acknowledge and I need to see happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm thankful we've had people say at that point, no, I'm not up for it.
Yeah. And
that's great.
So much easier to deal with, actually.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is the writings on the wall. We've said that before many times. Maybe the writings on the wall, we just need to have the conversation, right? So
I also think some people think that, but they say, yes, I'm in. And then the other enjoyable experience for me is a day or two after that conversation, they submit their resignation notice. Again, that's early. At least we haven't gone through months of pain.
That's right.
And then maybe they'll fill in some blanks a little bit quicker. We've had successful outcomes with PIPs where people have gone through, improved, and are still with us. And we've had some PIPs where they've gone through the process. It's been really frustrating. They haven't got better. There's been performance feedback given, and unfortunately, it's had to end. So I guess, yeah, if we roll back to that first meeting, hey, are you in? Like, because I want to be in. I believe in you. Sometimes that's hard to say. And if it is hard to say, maybe just say it isn't. Like, hey, I'm going to struggle if.
And the point that if it's difficult for you to, this is where Ben sometimes comes to me, or I go to Ben, or we go to the leadership team. Hey, we have this team member that we need to discuss because I don't know. And the reflecting question that people always ask, Riz, are you ready to go and invest time first?
Mm.
So sometimes asking yourself that question is the most important bit. Because if the answer is really no, and then you really, really, really look deep here, if it's no
Mhm.
inside, so all your behaviors and actions and thoughts down the line, it's just going to reflect that.
Mm.
So if it is the case, it's a no, then obviously you can have that conversation. But that's a different conversation. That's a, hey, I think this is where I'm at. I'm not ready to do this, but you're just pulling the pin pretty quickly
Yes.
on that. And the reason why it's a no usually, and this is something I realized as well, is because we didn't give ourselves or everyone the opportunity to have that earlier conversation where it might have been a maybe. And even earlier, it might have been, yes, I'm still invested, right? So it's because we've left something long enough to go, there's no way back. It's just a no.
Mm. Mm. We already don't like each other enough.
Yeah, we're at that point where we eat lunch at different times. We don't want to see, whatever dramatic things you can think of. It's just no.
Yeah.
So
No one talks to me.
yeah, that's exactly right. Who wants to work in a workplace like that? And so if that has happened, and sometimes it is unfortunate, I don't envy you to have that conversation, but that conversation needs to happen quickly,
Mm.
very, very quick, because the outcome is the same, if not worse. It's either you don't get the productivity or whatever issues you're trying to fix. You don't get that long term, or you don't have the person who's not doing it anyways. It's the
Yep.
same thing, right? It's just actually worse if they stay longer. Working backwards from there, if it's a question of like, yes, I want to invest and I believe in that. I think they've had a few hard months or they've had some things that you just need to pick
Mm.
up the conversation on. Then you go through a process of having that check in with them and asking them, hey, I've just noticed a few things. I'm still invested in the process. Are you invested in the process for the future here? Don't answer yet. Here's the things that I've noticed.
Mm.
Because without sharing context, there's no point. So be very authentic. Use examples. I use real examples. I take notes of client situations or
Yeah.
missed things, technical issues, whatever, repeating issues that's happening. I use real examples, compile them, take time to do this. I noticed this, because of this issues that we have that I've noticed real life. What's your perspective on it? Get them to answer that question as well.
Mm.
Oh, it's because of whatever that reason is. The outcome that you want to get is, are we both going to take responsibility on the next step? Right? Because then sometimes those conversations happen. It's just a deflecting. That was this, that was that, that was this. If you don't come out of that conversation with both parties feeling like, yeah, we agree, there's an issue.
Mm.
Or you might be like, the issue is here. I can see their perspective. It's gone down a little bit, but it's still an issue. They might go from like, there was no issue, but I can see where you're coming from.
Mm.
There is an issue at this level. We want to try to get that balanced out, because what you want to get at the outcome of that is, I see what you're seeing. You see what I'm seeing. Can we
Mm.
work on this together? Because the next step is putting scientific KPIs to make sure that they report. We do it weekly, to that they report weekly over a defined period of time. So it might be a
Yep.
month, and then we reassess.
Okay. And so in the past, what we've done is we've put like let's say a month's timeline down and said, hey, we need to see this result from, in 4 or 5 weeks time or by X date. And you're saying in between that, you're doing the weekly check-ins or KPIs where they're coming to you and going, well, here's what I agreed to do, here's the result. And I think very quickly we've seen people pull their act up.
Yeah.
But also very quickly, I think we've also had situations where people have gone, you know what, I'm really not hitting this. I can't see myself in for the long term. And again, they check themselves out, which
But it's self-reporting, right? They self-report to you to minimize, again, the effort for you to then. There is one part of their responsibility is to also report to you. If they
yeah,
can't do that, we can't even do this process, right? So they have a responsibility of doing that, and you have the responsibility of there's promises that both sides make. You need to report and meet those KPIs. I'll make sure that I provide honest feedback, on-time feedback, and then you know what you need to improve on. I'm still invested in the process. That's what you're trying to say.
yeah,
And you're right. There has been some of them 1 week, and oh man, okay, it was just a communication thing. You weren't clear.
yeah,
Now it's clear. We're done.
yep,
Move on, play on, game on, play as usual, whatever you want to call it. There's some that will happen and happen and happen again. The issues still show up week on week. Again, they might just say, this is what I meant by separate together. They might finally see, I see what the issue is, Riz. You told me very clearly, and I agree with those issues. I just am not there. I can't get there. And there might be other reasons. I've got other commitments, issues, other things. Well, I don't feel like this is right for me anymore. Industry. I want a different job. I'm moving. I don't care anymore.
I want
Whatever.
to be a barista.
Yeah, totally quit the accounting industry. Whatever that I've been watching too many Gary Vee videos. Yeah. Like what? I'm not knocking on that. It's just a joke. But the point I'm trying to say is that something has changed that
Mm,
they can see that they're not meeting the expectations anymore, right? And
mm,
that expectation is very clear and it's set right. And obviously it has to be reasonable as well. So like
mm,
what 40, 50 hours, including the weekends and like, nothing crazy. But my point in saying that is when they say no, it's a much easier next conversation or within the same conversation to go, I agree, you agree, we see eye to eye on even separating, right?
yeah.
Versus a very adversarial conversation that you might have. So
Yeah.
it is a powerful tool to be authentic at the beginning
Mm,
because it carries through that whole process. Even for the other side, they know that they can be authentic and real, and there's no bad blood. We just go separate
mm,
ways. And you will do well wherever you're going. We'll do well, wherever we're going. We'll figure it out. It's okay. And something that it came to mind as well, Ben, is sometimes the uneasiness, and I went through this, the uneasiness of starting that process
oh,
is that, oh my gosh, what if they said no? Right? Oh my gosh, what if they left?
it's a
What
great thing in a lot of instances.
Yeah, and it was so hard for me to see. It's so hard for me to see though when during those times. And I'm sure some people who are listening would say, "Who's going to do the work? Who's going to do this? Who's going to fill in the capacity? I'm so busy right now."
It just rolled off my tongue, but we're in a situation where it's hard to get staff in any industry, particularly the accounting industry. And
That's
so it's
true.
like, it's better they're gone. It's easy for me to say that. But at the end of the day, like Riz, you've had instances in your team where you're down a manager and you've had to step in. Would
That's
you
right.
rather keep the person who was there previously, and not have to step down, so to speak? Or would you rather just um, sort out the performance issue and wait for the correct person to come along?
The reason why I can answer that question confidently and say no, I'd rather not, and find someone else. The pain in finding somewhere else and the cost in finding somewhere else is much less than what we went through when there was such a big imbalance in our culture.
Mm,
Because if we're risking it, because we've been through it and I've been through it, that was way more tiring, way more capital intensive, brain power intensive, emotional intensiveness in dealing with so many fires in the people department than separating together early on. And then, yes, I have to take on a little bit of work and do, we can't find people. It was a few months before we found someone to replace that. And it was during our tax planning season. It was a crazy time for me. But where am I now compared to where it was before? It was actually better than
mm,
ever.
mm.
So, which is interesting, right? Like we can never imagine our future self and where we are, but our past lessons are trying to tell us something.
Yep, and it's hard to stay positive sometimes when we're in the position, but and if you're in that position and listening, please do something about it. Please.
The other thing is, I know this again very difficult in an industry that's trying hard to find people. But if we can not be one away from absolute destruction, which means that if you lose one team member, everything crumbles. If we can get and we are able financially and we are able to source talent a little bit earlier on to have one extra team member as a backup, a little bit more capacity. Hopefully, you're not doing timesheets, but you're not having productivity going through the roof for this one person. They're shared across the team. They're a floating team member, we like to call them. They like work within different teams sometimes. That gives you a bit of future proofing, reduces the risk of your business. And it's easier to have these conversations as well. Because remember, A team members can tend to be C's and D's as well. So just because if you do your assessment right now, everyone on my board is everyone that I want. But if one was to leave, everything
Yeah,
kind of like
a
you
lot of pressure on everyone else.
and when that happens, those A members can become B, C's, and D's, and suddenly your ship is just full of people that you don't want. You can try to future proof it. I understand the challenges of finding good team members and a reasonable rate as well these days, but I implore you guys to try to think of that as a way to save you future headaches. That's the value in finding that team member right now.
Mm, awesome, awesome. Well, Riz, I was thinking we'd go for maybe 30, 40 minutes on this one, but we're clocking about the hour now.
Oh gosh.
I feel like we've covered it well, though. There's definitely been a few things that have popped up that might make good topics to chat through at another time. Yeah. I think we've covered it well, and I hope that it's benefited the people who are listening, and I'll just give you encouragement to be able to deal with some of the situations that you might have now or you might have in the future when it comes to people management. Maybe just before we finish up, Riz, did you want to share maybe your biggest lesson? If you think back over the performance improvement programs that you've delivered, maybe I can just see the trauma.
Just funny that I have a list of it. Is that a good thing
Yeah,
or a bad thing?
it's burned in the back of your retinas. But yeah, if you think of like some of the hardest moments that you've had there, what's one of the challenging things, but the lesson that you've learned out of it that you take forward in your, I guess, the ones you've done since, or that you recommend people keep in mind. So what's the one, like the biggest thing? If this podcast episode was like 2 minutes long, and you had one chance to get one message across, what is it?
Definitely have the hard conversations.
Mm.
Have the hard conversations, because hard conversations allow you to identify issues early on,
Mm.
but also hard conversations are part of what we do. And we need to be comfortable with that. We need to be very comfortable with that. That's it. Because everything that I've ever avoided in those time has become worse because I didn't have the hard conversation.
Yeah. I feel like that's a nice answer for dealing with client dramas too. But anyway, that's definitely another topic.
It sounds like it's a skill we should learn.
Yeah, it just doesn't. Yeah,
It's not easy, but it is part of
no,
what we do. It's the DNA of what we do.
yeah, that's it.
Mm.
Brilliant. Well, Riz, thank you. It's been for our first, how would you call it, a topical discussion. It's been a joy. Tough topic to share and to go through. But thank you very much for sharing, and I hope the audience has had benefit from it.
My pleasure, Benny.
Thanks for listening to High Performance Accountants. I'm Ben Walker. If you got value from today's episode, the best next step is to join our free Facebook group at highperformance.accountants/Facebook. It's where I share more videos, templates, and answer your questions personally. You can also grab my free tools bundle or take the High Performance Scorecard to see where your firm stands at our website. All the links are in the show notes below. See you next week.